It's time for more Heretics and Loyalists in the world of 40K, where we go and take a look at some Loyalists or Heretics and then swap them around inside the world of Warhammer 40K. Not 30K, 40K specifically.
That's right, I'm going to be taking on the beloved chapters, the Dark Angels, and turning them into Chaos Unaligned. And what about you, Murray?
Well, I've already done one or two, and this time I'm going to take on the Raven Guard, renowned emo people hiding in the shadows with big guns.
So there's so much to do for this project. Gotta build it, paint it, kit bash it.
Bop it, twist it.
Yep, that's it.
Let's get into it. It's tabletop time. This video is sponsored by the Forsaken Sentinels.
So this is, I think, my first time doing something like this for the channel. So for this project, we kind of lined up everything and decided what factions we wanted to go with. And I picked Dark Angels. Not something I thought I would pick straight away, but when I was thinking about converting a Dark Angels into a Heretic, I kind of vibed with the sort of medieval look that they have a little bit, like monkey medieval, I guess. And I thought that this could work really well for a conversion, and I had a couple of ideas already. I think if I get the opportunity to do this project again with a different Space Marine faction, it would be really cool to make them Chaos aligned. But I think just to make it super easy on myself, we're just gonna go with an unaligned Chaos Dark Angel. I'm looking through all the kits that we have on our very, very big shelf. The first kit that I saw was this Asmodai kit, and I thought that, I know there's some bits missing from this box that we've used for various other videos, but I'm fairly certain his torso base was in there, as well as this really cool head too. So I thought this could be an awesome foundation to start off with. Unfortunately, there was a fair bit of work to do. So to kick things off, the first thing I needed to do was remove all of the Loyalist crap that this guy had on him. This included purity seals, any sort of iconography. Basically, I try and scrap all of that by carving it off and putting a little bit of plastic glue on there. Because I'm an absolute fiend when it comes to trying to smooth out any of those jagged edges, and I find that just putting a whole lot of plastic glue on it and praying and not touching it tends to work sometimes in my favor, so that's what I did in this case. As I mentioned before, he had a couple of head options previously, but the one I was after was this kind of evil looking head, which luckily was still in there. And after sort of looking through all the old school Chaos bits that we had, there were a couple of helmets that had these really cool retro horns in them. And again, this particular head that I'd found had a pretty good amount of side space in it. I did have to carve a little bit of his hood off, but what cooler way to make him Chaos than to give him some massive ass demon horns. Smoke tends to be one of the sort of big aesthetics, I guess, of this army. So this was something I really wanted to incorporate in a way when it came to making him a heretic. But I'll elaborate a little bit more on that later on, you deciding what kits I wanted to use. But I definitely knew I wanted to include smoke somehow in this particular model. Moving on to weapons. So I decided to keep what Asmodai typically has as a model. This is a mace with the sort of Dark Angels emblem on them, so that absolutely had to go, and a sword as well. The mace wasn't too hard. I found something in the old Chaos Bits box that worked pretty well as a replacement. Nothing too fancy, but it works either way. His sword, however, was a little bit more difficult. I pulled out a bunch of different Chaos aligned boxes, and I couldn't really find something that I was happy with. In the end, I found this blade from the new Empress Children Flawless Ones box, which I think is missing that little bit of regalness to it, but overall, I'm still happy with it, and I think it looks pretty cool. I also decided to add a little tassel on the end, again, trying to make it look a little bit more fancy. Now that this guy was pretty much coming together and I'd glued on the main sort of parts of the model, I could start fiddling with the little bits and pieces. Now it's time to come back to the smoke that I was mentioning before. There were a couple of kits from Warhammer Age of Sigmar, namely these manifestations for the Soulblight Gravelords, or these manifestation spells. And there's a ton of options for smoke in these. Looking at the model, I decided that the best place would be for the smoke to be coming out of his backpack. Also, this is kind of like a technical thing as well, but when I was looking at the composition of a model from a certain area, I found a couple of gaps. This meant that if I could put the smoke behind him, it would kind of fill out those gaps and make it look like a more interesting silhouette. Once I was happy with everything, including the pose and how everything was sort of sitting on the model too, I could go in with some gap filling, which I used Milliput to do. There were quite a few holes in this model that needed to be fixed, so I did spend a generous amount of time making sure everything was smooth and that the model blended together flawlessly. And that's it, done. And I have to say, this guy looks a little bit Saturday morning cartoon villainy, but that's kind of cool. I'm pretty happy with that. I think in a way this represents a very early version of Chaos, I guess, which again, incorporating those themes of the Dark Angels being sort of medieval monkeyish, I don't know, I think it kind of fits as an aesthetic. And I'm really happy with this either way. I also think that like most things when it comes to me and kit bashing, the paint job is gonna try and sell this the most. So let's move on to painting. So yeah, painting. I approach this in a very different way than I usually would. I don't typically paint a lot of like chaosy stuff, so I kind of wanted to challenge myself to do something a little bit different. I also wanted to test something out as well, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But first, let's get down to the very first foundation of why I decided to paint this guy the way I did. So I sprayed him in Chaos Black, which I've now decided is my favorite spray, which always has been my favorite spray, but I now refuse to use anything else because it just doesn't lay down the same. I would rather try and work up to a brighter color if I have to using Chaos Black versus using any other spray. So sprayed in black, happy with that. I then decided to try and do what I guess you can say is a slap chop method. Dry brushing on a layer of gray and then a layer of white on top. Now this guy has a lot of sticky out pieces. Some of it's very fragile as well. So dry brushing this thing was a bit of a nightmare. I had to be super careful and move into various brushes to try and get into all of those little gaps. This took a huge chunk of my time, but overall I was pretty happy with how this turned out. Especially with the white highlights as well, I could sort of see where all the textures were laying. And I don't know, making this black and white and doing this method kind of made me want to make an army that's completely monochrome, so that could be a very, very cool thing. The biggest inspiration for this model and this paint job as well was to kind of keep it in the grim, dark era or painting style. And while I won't say that this is a good indication of that, I just wanted to make sure nothing was too saturated in color and kind of has this sort of like dark, depressing theme on it. After all, this is a dark angel that's turned heretic. Once I was happy with all of my dry brushing, I was ready to finally put some color on this model, which is where I talk about a very important feature next. So, I've had a few people ask me about this particular kit, I guess you can say. So these are the speed paint markers from Army Painter. Now the boys got to test these out at Gen Con, so they have gone through international travel, so that may have changed the results that I have on these because they've been opened and used. However, I had varying results with these. So the first color I actually wanted to use was obviously green. However, the particular pen that I used had no way of producing any green. I did everything the instructions said. I shook it, I replaced the nib, I did all of that stuff, but paint did not want to come out of this thing no matter how hard I tried, which meant that I couldn't use the green, which was a little bit sad, but that's fine. So instead, I decided to try and use the silver. This kit also didn't have gold in it, which I think it's supposed to. Again, I think the boys have taken it, so I couldn't use gold, but I did have to paint a sword silver, so I decided to give this a go. So one thing I will say about these paints, or at least the metallics from what I had used, they are completely opaque, which means that if you paint them on something, you're not gonna get anything showing from underneath. For some people, this is really good. For others, for like me, this isn't particularly great because all the work I had done previously, well, it wasn't showing up. The payoff is really good in terms of like the color that comes out is quite nice, but you can't necessarily control how much is going to come out. You can't control the consistency, and there's just a few things that I particularly wasn't very happy with. I also decided on the back to try out a brown and a blue because I really wanted to see if these colors could blend. Now I probably did pick colors that were very, very saturated, so trying to blend these colors was a bit difficult, and I found that the blue kind of just overtook the brown completely. Your working time with these is also very, very fast as well, so if you want to do anything with these particular paints, kind of have to work as you go quite quickly. So I was really hoping to blend these two colors together. Unfortunately, they didn't quite work the way that I thought they would. I also decided to test with some water to see what would happen, and then I found they kind of turned into a watercolor and lost a lot of that saturation, which I guess is kind of fine for the smoke. I think it actually kind of looks pretty okay. But if I was trying to paint anything else, I don't think I would like it as much. So overall, how do I feel about these markers? Well, it depends. If you're someone that likes using a marker instead of a paintbrush, then I guess they're kind of cool. But I think typically when it comes to miniature painting, I do prefer to just use a paint. I like control over what I'm using because it's what I'm used to. These could be a really good option maybe for kids, so then you don't have to get the paint pots out and mess around with that. But with kids, you can just give them the marker and they can just go crazy with it. I also found that the tip could be a little bit unforgiving as well. So if you're working with something that's quite fragile, you have a higher chance of breaking something or just being a little bit too harsh with it versus with a paintbrush. So take it all with a grain of salt because that's just my opinion on these markers. I don't love these in particular. In the end, I actually decided to opt for using contrast paints to try and show the paint job I had already done through. So moving forward, I basically laid down a bunch of contrast paints over the top of the slab chop method I guess I had used previously, and I think he looks super sick. I'm really happy with how the colors came out and how all my rendering can show through, which is great. Once that was all done, all I needed to do was finish off the base, give it a black trim, and this guy is basically done.
Surprise! It is time to talk about this video's sponsor, the Forsaken Sentinels. This is a set of modular Gothic terrain for all of your fantasy needs. Created by Dan McDonald with over 15 years in environmental art in the video games industry, you can see the love and attention that has gone into every piece here. As I said, it is fully modular and you can place things however you see fit. They also have this really nice pin design. These ones are circular and they go together really nicely. These printed, honestly, so damn well. The only parts that I think had supports here were the statues, and it was a single piece that just came off super easy. A lot of prints can have a lot of issues when it comes to painting, getting into different areas or details not printing correctly, but everything here is absolutely fantastic. Really thrilled with this. Had a great time painting it, as you can tell, and you will hopefully enjoy seeing more of this in the reveals. Absolutely perfect for any fantasy tabletop setting or to really elevate your next D&D encounter. These were an absolute pleasure to paint. I had a great time, and if you're interested, the links are in the description below. Go check out the Forsaken Sentinels. Back to the video. So the legion I have chosen is the Raven Guard, known primarily for sort of stealth and infiltration, sort of weird juxtaposition in the Warhammer universe of Space Marines, basically wearing personal tank armor, sneaking around tippy-toe style like bloody Wile E. Coyote. There's a couple of reasons that I really wanted to work on these guys, namely because, you know, they're sort of dark and edgy to start with, but also that stealth aspect. I think that would be really cool and is sort of not really utilized in any of the current Chaos settings. About now, you're probably thinking, so Murray's gonna do Raven Guard, you know, jetpacks, claws, dropping from ceilings. He's basically gonna make Night Lords. No, I specifically don't want to make Night Lords, who are the terrors in the night. I want to make something that's a terror of the night. I want something that's a lot more demonic, a lot of more possession here, something that's basically coming out of the wall to attack someone. You know, that real eldritch horror of the night, but encased in ceramite. I want to basically have the front part of a Space Marine emerging from the wall, hands or gun extended to find its victim. And so to do that, I need the front half of a Space Marine. And I've actually found the perfect thing, would you believe it? We've got this old ransacked Blackstone Fortress sort of expansion. You've got all the models, a lot of trader guards, some little gremlins, but you do get 2 lone Space Marines in it. And they're in a pretty standard pose, but they are sort of leaning forwards over 1 foot, which is what I want. I want them to be stepping forwards out of a wall. But the main thing here is that they're push fit and in 2 halves, namely the front half and the back half. So if I don't assemble them properly, they're already cut in half. So I can just have that half emerging from the wall. And so that's what I'm going to start with. Choosing a head for my Raven Guard here, naturally I wanted to be like, Raven Guard, I want the beaky helmet. But I decided I wanted to really communicate a bit more chaos here. I actually decided that I really liked one of the helmets that the Blackstone Fortress kit came with. It sort of communicates a little bit of demonicness while also retaining a lot of it's still a Space Marine. It hasn't completely lost itself to chaos. Or at least, not yet. And then for the leading hand, I actually decided I want to go for a gun. Just the concept of a plasma pistol leading the way through a wall, going from incorporeal back to the material plane sort of thing. Like, that's like the shark fin in the water, the thing that leads around the corner. That's terrifying. And so I'm gonna use one of the old classic Chaos Space Marine pistols from the old plastic sprue. I really like this part. It's nice and bulky, really chunky, and just has a lot of mean heft to it. And so I'm thinking that the other hand will of course be like a melee weapon or something, but I haven't quite settled on that yet, so I'm going to just work on the rest of the model and I'll get back to that. Speaking of, it's time to start working on the base. And by base, I mean wall. Thankfully, I'm not worrying too much at all about playability, as this is basically going to be a showcase piece, a diorama in itself. And we have Necromunda parts. And so I'm just going to take one of those and turn it 90 degrees onto its side, and we'll have an instant wall. And so I'm just going to glue it straight onto the base. And so with that blocked in, I can start rough fitting in my Raven Guard. But this also allows me a little bit more freedom, as I don't need all the parts of the model to line up perfectly, so I can give him a bit more freedom. And while I'm allowing that to properly bond, it's time to actually make a decision about the other weapon, the other hand that he is currently missing. And while weapons like lightning claws are pretty iconic for Raven Guard, Dave actually came up with a different solution, which I really liked, and I decided to go with it. And that is to use the, where is it? Haha, this box, which I in fact care about all the gene stealers in here, the really messed up, malformed ones, which have some really creepy hands. And that's gonna be like my demonically formed hand, this Space Marine. They'll be coming out of his gauntlet. I haven't glued the hand onto the model yet. I'm going to first do the sculpting, which is the next part. I need to paste this guy against the wall. I'm gonna use Milliput to draw what I'm imagining, sort of like warpness, literally the warpiness, sort of like rippled out on this wall, and then the Space Marine, the Raven Guard, has pushed through like it was water or fog, streaming off him, billowing like shadow or fire. Yeah, I don't really have a great descriptor other than everything is just warping because of the warp in Warpland. And then as a final flourish, I decided that there is another side of this wall, so if I cut the backpack slightly, angle it onto the other side of the wall, add more of the billowing shadows around it, I can just completely complete the Space Marine. Like, he's literally walking like a ghost through this wall. And that's freaking cool. Games Workshop, you have full permission to make this sort of thing a reality. This is so cool. And voila! I have finished my conversion. I'm actually really happy with this. This has come out really well. I feel like sculpting flame is actually quite a challenging thing. It kind of looks a bit more like tentacles in a way. I'm sure the paint job will fix that, but at the moment, yeah, it kind of looks like it's a bit more of a Cthulhu creature, which is not a complaint, it's just an observation, and we'll see how the painting fixes that. So I'm gonna go spray him, and let's start doing that. So since I was effectively painting something from the blackest reaches of hell, I of course decided to prime this model with black. I want to set a really moody ambiance, so of course black is a really good place to start, as white's really going to punch up any colors I use and make it feel a lot more friendly, a lot more vibrant, and I don't want that. I want this to be moody and grim and emo, just like the Raven Guard are. And to really emphasize this mood, I want to keep this wall this really sort of grimy, dark, sludgy, sort of green color. I really want this to be evocative of like a hallway that, of course, you would see in Warhammer, but like, you know, in Doom or some super creepy sort of place like that. Somewhere you would expect to come across a demon, to be honest. And then while I'm painting this, I'm making sure to draw this color down the sort of the warping fabric of reality that is coalescing from the wall and allowing this Space Marine, this Raven Guard, to stride through it. And so once I've finished painting the wall, weathering it down with grungy oranges and some nice highlights, it's time to start blending those colors into the Raven Guard itself, which I'm basically going to keep true to the 40K Imperial equivalent of the Raven Guard here, which of course means jet black armor, red trim on the right shoulder pad, and then some white and silver trim elsewhere, which, considering this is now a Chaos model, there's going to be a lot of trim. And thanks to the design of this particular helmet that I picked out, I'm going to paint this trim in such a way that it ends up looking like a white skull on the face here. Now, when I sat down and decided that I was going to do Raven Guard and came up with this whole concept, I hadn't actually looked into any inspiration. I just went with my gut feeling and things that I thought would look cool. So actually, after the fact, I went and out of curiosity looked up what happened in the Dornian heresy, which hilariously, the Raven Guard actually went to Tzeentch, so they went all full warp and stuff. You know, all movement based and trickery, which is basically what I've done here. I guess the theme is just really there for Raven Guard. So anyway, back to the painting. It is time to do some extra creepy things with painting the claw and the gun. I do of course want this hand to stand out. It's this really creepy, warp, possessed sort of hand. And so I'm gonna do a bit of artist trickery here. Namely, I'm gonna choose to paint the hand red, which is gonna allow the eye to bounce across the body to the red shoulder pad, to the eyes, which will be red, and then back to the arm. This is a very simple and effective way to make the eye move around the miniature and stay looking at this miniature. If you look at any miniature painting competition winners, you'll notice that you can see this pattern within those miniatures themselves. And anything that makes your eye stay on your miniature miniature more than anyone else's will automatically subconsciously help you convince the judges that your miniature is super interesting. And so I'm even going to repeat this technique with a couple of other different colors on this miniature. But anyway, here's a nice slimy creepy red talon that that looks like it's going to do some damage. But now for the final piece, that extra spice for the miniature. I'm going to paint this plasma pistol. And so I decided to go for something extra special, and so I'm going to paint this plasma glow purple. I'm just going to use my brush, and so I'm going to grab a pure white until I get the white a nice flat color. Then after that, I'm going to do a few more coats of fluorescent pink, and then this is where the fun part comes in. I'm going to trickle some more white down into the bottom recesses so I get a bit of that glowing punch from underneath within the mechanics of the pistol itself. And then on the outer edge, I'm going to start doing some shadows, some harsh, darker purples. This will create that super contrast and make it really feel like the gun is glowing. Then with a lick of paint on the base, this model is ready for reveals. It's that time of the video where we give a huge shout out to all of our patrons. It is you that allow us to keep doing this amazing job. You always hear this sort of spiel on YouTube, of course, but it has never been more true, to be completely honest. Your direct support really enables us to do the projects that we love, as well as allowing us to keep doing everything. Like, honestly, your support has allowed me to take a few days off to rest my voice, and look at me, I'm back. So that's all thanks to you, you wonderful people. But on the other side, sorry, no more enforced Batman impersonations. On our Patreon mini server, you will get exclusive access to a bunch of things, including just chatting with us about what you're working on, as well as showing off in our monthly mini review what you're specifically doing and what kind of feedback you want to see to help everyone in the community grow, because that's what we want to see. Links are in the description below. See you there. Ta-da! We're done. We're not going to get like the whole, oh my god, I haven't seen yours for the first time. I was always looking over your shoulder seeing what you're working on. But we get to do like the little swap. The bloody sword that you've chosen for this is so good. And also just comboed with the mace, so good. I am such a sucker for the old school Chaos Horns.
Yeah, Dave said he looks very Saturday morning cartoon, evil villain. But I think that's kind of charming. I don't know.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, he looks like the evil sorcerer knight on like the front of like a 90s metal band sort of thing.
Very, very metal. I love how you've put the like background into your model. I've never thought about doing that.
It's something I haven't done before.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Oh, you've done a really good job.
I've seen other people do it. I was like, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, no, it looks awesome. I love the pink plasma glow as well, but I think blue plasma is very overrated, so I like seeing different colors for plasma.
Yeah, it's really fun. You can always use whatever color, but you just need to make sure that, it suits the rest of the colors of the miniature, and you can get it vibrant. That's important.
Yeah, 100%. But no, I think both of these are pretty great.
Hell yeah.
I'm really happy with mine. I'm Virginia really happy with yours.
Nice. Mark this off the list. We've done another 2 Loyalists. There's not many to go.
No, there's not. But if you have any suggestions, especially also like what pairings you want to see, make sure you drop a comment below.
Yeah, if you've got any ideas. Dave was supposed to be here. I don't know where he's gone.
No, neither do I.
Anyway, let us know in the comments which kind of pairings you'd like to see. I think we've done another Loyalist, so it'll be time to go back to Heretics to Loyalists. I'm kind of a fan of that one. So,
yeah, that'll be fun.
Let us know, and we'll see you next time. Bye.